The mind that thinks it's the default. When you realize your way of thinking is not universal. By peak afflatus, I would notice recurrence before meaning, analyzing patterns of behavior and spotting the mechanisms behind them. This way of seeing underlying structure felt so natural and obvious that it was hard to imagine anyone thinking differently. But I was out of sync with the social tempo. I would watch patterns play out, comparing them with previous experiences, while others seemed to live entirely in the immediate present. They reacted. I referenced. In my ongoing search for internal coherence, I grew more estranged from my peers. Where their minds seemed to sing in social interaction, mine found its harmony in the alignment of concepts and deep interrogation. Something that felt intuitive was revealing itself as an outlier. The neurodivergence divide is like a cognitive fork in a river. One branch orients towards belonging, the other towards clarity. While one meanders along the banks of relational meaning and emotional immediacy, carried by shared momentum, the other funnels into channels of detached precision, systems, and logic. Because this structured fork feels efficient and carries a sense of inevitability, it is easy for autistic people to assume their cognitive style is the default. What I hadn't realized for a long time was that this assumption wasn't uniquely autistic. It was human. Any mind that moves fluidly through the world tends to mistake that fluency for universality. When something works effortlessly from the inside, it is easy to forget that it is an interface rather than reality itself. All the while, the seemingly chaotic main river is the one with the volume and momentum. It can look like it is avoiding order, but of course it never sought it. Pattern recognition fuels its own reward system. Insight converts into dopamine. Precision feels like comfort. Coherence becomes relief. Understanding becomes pleasure. Neurotypical minds are rewarded differently. They are reinforced through emotional resonance, interpersonal validation, and the glue of social cohesion. Belonging itself becomes the signal. It can be surprising for autistic people to discover, out in the wild, that their clarity is rare, that most communication emerges from emotion rather than structure, that many people never examine their own cognition, and that metacognition is a skill, not a default. I saw this most clearly in conversations where I answered the question beneath the question, only to realize later that clarity wasn't what had been asked for. The more I trusted pattern over participation, the less fluent I became in the rituals that signal belonging. I could see myself growing more isolated, yet remained reluctant to contort myself into the masking required. The consequence is that analytical voices arrive at conversations from a different angle. They stand out not because they are grand, but because they are calm, structured, and uninterested in performance. Because so few people engage this way, it can feel unexpectedly refreshing to others. Answers sound philosophical. They travel deeper than the question intended or expected. When I realized my thinking was not baseline but a variation, I began to see it even more clearly. I leaned into it as a tool, not to persuade or convert, but to help others expand their own perspectives. I no longer needed others to share my way of thinking, or even to understand it. What mattered was helping them understand themselves. Sometimes what sounds like overthinking is simply thinking that has slipped out of sync with the dominant reward system in the room. You have been listening to Peak Afflatus.